Squaresoft? Yes, another JRPG. Hmm? No J? What? Secret of Evermore is an action RPG. Why not a JRPG? Well, this was developed by Square, but in America, not in Japan. Squaresoft Inc. was in charge of localizing games for Square during the 16-bit era. And they were tasked in developing a game for North American audiences. And they came out with the one and only game they ever developed, Secret of Evermore. The game came out in October of 1995 for the Super Nintendo in North America, and in 1996 it made its way in PAL territories in Australia. Weirdly enough, it never came out in Japan. It's yet to receive any sort of port. It's not on the Virtual Console at the time of this video, and there's no sequel. The game begins with you and your dog coming out of the movie theater. By the way, which movie theater lets you go inside with the dog? Anyways, your dog starts to chase a cat and end up in an abandoned mansion. With no locks, apparently? And when you find a strange machine, it teleports you somewhere. You're greeted by two strange men which seem to be working on a lab of sorts. And one of them escorts you out of there, where you are attacked by a couple of robots. You pick a bazooka that for some reason was there laying around. And then you escape on a pod and land on a place that resembles a lot the prehistoric era. For some reason, your dog changes into this beast. And how do you know it's your dog? Simple, right? You just throw a stick, and if it brings a bone, then it's your dog. Right? You are in this weird place, and from here on, you're trying to go back home. In the road, you'll find more people from Podunk? 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 I don't know how you say that. Anyways, this is the original place you are from. Fun fact, Wikipedia tells me that Podunk is an archetypical name of American places, real and imagined. As I was saying, you'll go to different places gathering clues on how to go back home. In most RPGs, the whole world is in stake, and only you can stop impending doom. Here is much simpler. You're just a boy who gets lost and is trying to get back home. It reminds me a lot of stories like The Wizard of Oz or The Never-Ending Story. I have mixed feelings about this story. In one hand, you have this original story that really moves away from the mold, but in the other hand, the story never really uses its potential. And to me, the biggest issue I have with it, it's its villain. I mean, talk about a weak-ass villain. In a good story, the bad guy gives the hero motivation to rise up to the occasion. All great heroes have great villains. But here is just something in the background doing stuff that may cause inconveniences here and there. And that's it. The story never really hits emotional notes, nor does it go to dark places. It remains flat all journey long. And why the fuck does the dog change his form depending on where he is? It's never explained, so don't bother with it, I guess. In the end, we have a very good and imaginative setup, but it doesn't do much with it. The graphics in this game are very good. They are very different locales, each with its own identity, and they are very good looking places and nice colors. But I do have a problem with the art direction. I know this is subjective, but to me the character models are just ugly. And the proportions are weird, and looking at the concept art, I can see where it comes from. The art, to me, is a little off-putting. But again, this is subjective, and I do admit that there are very nice looking places, as I said, and some of them are very imaginative and unique. The music is where I do have a problem. The box says, featuring environmental ambient sounds. Featuring? Most of the game is just you hearing birds and random nature sounds. It's fucking boring. I understand if you want to create tension, but when it's all over the game, it's just not effective. And the rest of the soundtrack is just so subdued that it makes me jump. Who's the composer for this game? Let me see here. Jeremy Soule? Why is that name familiar? Oh no. No. The composer for Skyrim? Probably my top 3 music themes of video games of all time was composed by him? What happened? Secret of Evermore was his first video game he ever composed for. And he even said that video game music, and I quote, lacked drama and intensity. I guess he never played Final Fantasy VI. It came a year before it. And there are several cameos of the Final Fantasy franchise in this game. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I guess that in Skyrim there's also a lot of ambient sounds. But why does it work in Skyrim so well? I think it's because of how realistic it looks. At least versus a game for the Super Nintendo where it doesn't really translate as well. At the end of the day, the soundtrack is not very varied, and it lacks oomph. And the same can be said for the sound effects. Jeremy Soule continued in the video game industry, composing for a gazillion more games, and even winning several awards for it. Looking at the box, it's probably the most accurate box I've ever seen. Render graphics? Checked. Battery backup? Checked. Environmental sounds? Checked. 24 mega action adventure? Maybe? Looking at the presentation as a whole, I'm not a fan of the artwork, and I thought the music was boring and the sound effects lacked. Well, not all of them, but a lot. I think that the presentation is not this game's high point, in my opinion. let's address the elephant in the room. The gameplay comes directly from Secret of Mana that came 2 years before Secret of Evermore. And no, it's not a sequel or a spiritual successor or anything like that. Squaresoft America just took the same engine from Secret of Mana to make their own game. Let's remember that this is a rookie team and this was their first game. That's why you see the same combat and rigging system, and even the graphics, you can tell, are similar. Let's talk about the combat. As I said, it comes directly from Secret of Mana. Thus, it plays very similar. What happens is that you have a bar that fills from 0 to 100% every time you attack. You want to hit when it's filled 100% because that's when you do the most damage. When you use certain weapons enough, you can upgrade them up to twice. You leave the attack button pressed, a bar will start to fill, and once it's filled completely, you can just let go of the attack button and unleash a very powerful attack. You'll have different weapons, and each will have different attributes besides just the normal damage output. The lances, for example, can be thrown once you upgrade them at least once, which is very handy. Some axes can be used to break certain walls, and bazookas can shoot different types of projectiles. I like this system. I think it's very smartly implemented. That way you can play it as an action game, but restricting you enough so that it becomes more strategic. The same can be said for the ring system. I love this system. It's pretty much a menu, but on a ring. Just hit the button and move with your D-pad and select what you need. I think it's a very smart and visual way to implement menus in a game. This leads us to the alchemy system. I actually like this system a lot, but there is one problem with it. The way it works is that someone will first teach you a formula. This can be heal, a fireball, a barrier, stuff like that. And then it will require 2 different ingredients to be able to cast it. And the more you cast a certain formula, the more powerful it becomes. Since you need ingredients, it has a cool dynamic where you just can't spam certain formula unless you have enough of what's required to use it. And at the same time, you want to upgrade it. The problem I have is that you need first to have the formula, and many of them are hidden, but hidden in a way that if you don't have a walkthrough, you'll just miss them. But at the end of the day, the ones that you really need to have, you just cannot miss because are just part of the story, so you'll have those. You can purchase ingredients or you can find them, and your dog can help you sniff ingredients. You can just hit the R or L buttons at any time and he'll start to sniff away. Talking about your dog, as we discussed, he changes form depending on which of the 4 main areas you are on. But here's another missed potential. Because it does not matter if you're a beast or a puddle, the attacks are the same. There's no difference. Except when you get to the last area and then you become a robot dog. And then you are awesome! The thing shoots very powerful lasers and moves super fast and pew 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 pew. Sorry for that. At this point, you'll want to choose to be the dog for the rest of the game, basically because how awesome he is. You can press select at any time to choose between you and your dog. And there's a couple of puzzles here and there where you need to change between the 2 of them. But if you notice, there's only the 2 of you, all game long. No one else joins your party. You can summon people from Badunk, but it's another missed potential. There's another missed opportunity, in my opinion, and that's the lack of multiplayer. Don't get me wrong, pretty much all RPGs were single-player affairs, but Secret of Mana was multiplayer, 3 in fact, and since this game uses a modified engine of that game, I thought this could really benefit from it, especially in a 2-player mode, because you and your dog are together pretty much the whole game. In an interview with NintendoLife.com, Brian Fechtbrau, I think that's how it's pronounced, the lead programmer, said that the multiplayer was not implemented because of complexity. since they were a new team, they had problems figuring out how to make it work. But they did try it, and this actually debunks a common misconception that there was no multiplayer because of the ROM size. In all actuality, Brian said, and I quote, "As I recall, it was actually more to do with falling manufacturing costs and rising interest in a bigger game. One day, out of the blue, we found out that we've been bumped to 24 megabit, and I don't think we've even been asking for it, at least not with any real hope. We were pretty happy." As you can see, it had nothing to do with the multiplayer, but rather just a corporate call. At first, I thought the game had a good combination of combat, puzzles, and mazes. But it goes to a point where the game just goes gone fucking ho with the mazes. To a point that it was just ridiculous. A maze after another maze, after another maze, and then another maze. And we're talking fucking long mazes here, right? And then after that maze is done, guess what? Another fucking maze! Here you go, more mazes! Here, you need maze? Here you go, it's another maze! It's just too many mazes and they're long, and you need to take your notepad with you and draw these fucking mazes, because if you don't do that, you're gonna get lost. Honestly, the game would have been much better without the amount of mazes that it has. In most RPGs, once you can fly over the world, is when it really opens up and you can move through many different places, doing side quests, finding epic gear, or just exploring. Here though, it's pointless. It's so restrictive. You can only land in these fire thingies and only to backtrack on the story. There's nothing to explore, nothing to do, it's just to say that it has it. No point, and another lose potential. The game is fun, at least when you're not on another maze. Would have loved to have more characters in your party, and more freedom at the end of the game to explore and have side quests to do. There are several cameos from the Final Fantasy series. Check this out. It's Cecil from Final Fantasy IV. Chocobos, anyone? And look, can you spot it? You cannot. Look closely. The guys from Final Fantasy VI. I love when games do that, don't you? I did have a good time with the game. It has good fundamentals that came directly from Secret of Mana. But if I could describe the game in 2 words, it would be missed opportunity. But don't let that deter you. If you liked Secret of Mana and want to have more of that same combat style, this will definitely scratch that itch. Let's see here. Tales of Fantasia has a better story, better presentation, and is pretty much a wash in the gameplay department. So, you Secret of Evermore are definitely below. So, thanks for watching Gokado's Retro Reviews, and hasta la próxima.